Real quick, before we start this podcast episode, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Marc Colcer podcast. I know you've got a million things that you could be doing right now, and the fact that you're taking time out of your day to watch this podcast episode truly means the world to me, and I just want to say thank you for that. If you'd like to continue to support the podcast, right below this video, if you could hit the subscribe button, and then, hey, if you got some more time and you want to hit the download button, the comment button, the like button, the share button, any of those buttons, it's greatly, greatly appreciated. It helps for other people to find out about the podcast, and it helps for you to be notified about future episodes. So if you guys could take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. Outside of that, this episode and every other episode is brought to you guys by Roast Umber Coffee. As some of you guys know, I co-founded Roast Umber Coffee, and we have the greatest farmers in Guatemala and Honduras and the greatest roaster in Grand Rapids, Michigan, all to bring you guys the greatest cup of coffee possible. So if you'd like to try it out, go to our website, use the coupon code MARC30, and you're going to get 30% off your coffee. Now on to the episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Welcome to the Marc Colcer Podcast. Yeah, I mean, it's like every once in a while I take a second and I think back to like how I operated in the space when I like first got in, how I operate now, and it's like it's crazy to think about that and like some of the dumb things I used to do that I no longer will do. Like I've learned a ton since being here, and you know, and I just try to every single day just keep learning, and as long as I'm doing that, like, you know, I'm gonna end up just fine. But
I think we probably think we're more different now than we were a year ago or 18 months ago, just because we have less. Like, I think we'd be just as dumb we will be just as dumb
if the bowl continued.
Yeah, in the next bowl, we'll be just as dumb. When everything goes up into the right, no matter what you touch, you'll be a lot less. You'll think about things a lot less. You'll mint every time. You won't look at the thesis. You won't like the markets more. I think educate us. I think the markets educate us more than like ourselves, actually, which is kind of weird. But like when your bags are smaller, you can't sprinkle as much, right? Like if I just gave you $100,000 tomorrow, you'd probably not quite be as diligent as you are today because you just have more, right? There's this, it's this idea of Timothy Ferriss coined it. It's called the curse of abundance, which is like this. It's been a driving principle of me for like every business I've ever started. I realized my very first business, like I had so little, I made so little, but I scrapped for everything, and every customer I got mattered, every dollar I took in mattered, every dollar I spent mattered, you know. And as you start to like get more in your business, you have more abundance, you start to be a lot less like frugal, a lot less resourceful, you start to be a lot more wasteful. And so like I really try and think of like, you know, and we're in a position now, we're well funded, and sometimes you need to be somewhat wasteful to keep speed with like a project that people want. But there is certainly a curse of abundance. When we have more, we tend to be less diligent with what we have.
Yeah. So, okay. So then my question for you on that would be, how do we remind ourselves to like stay as diligent as we are right now when things are a bit more abundant?
So I think the best way to do it is discipline, right? And creating your own form of discipline. My brother's got like an incredible form of discipline that he followed in the bull market and he follows in the bear market too, where he'll go. And I remember talking to him a lot about like Solana, and you know, when we're in at 30 and it pumps to 250 and then it comes back down to 100 and then back down to 30. And he's like, Corey, here's what you have to do when you're going to invest, you know, if it's real money, like you're going to invest and it is an investment, if you're doing it for the fun, like that's different, right? But like if the reason is investment, just sit down and write like, what are your convictions right now about why you're investing your money in this, whether it's the market or whether it's the company or whether it's the founders or whether it's the utility or whatever it is. Write that down. And then anytime you have an inkling to either buy more or sell or liquidate or whatever it is, or the project goes down, and you just go back to that list and what's changed, right? Is it the same founders? Is it the same market? Okay, the market's changed a little bit. Now we have to adjust, right? The product's changed, competitors have changed. So figure out what your convictions are and just write those down. And then when you start to kind of question your own investment, just go back to those convictions and ask yourself what's changed. And if things have changed, then it's right for your convictions to change. But if things haven't changed, then just hold true, like hold strong, right? And let those convictions play out. And you'll be right and you'll be wrong sometimes. Doesn't mean that you're going to win every time, right? Sometimes your convictions are also wrong. But I think that's the disciplined way of doing it. And often it's kind of like having a ledger versus a hot wallet, right? Like when you just add that little bit of friction where it's like, okay, I got to plug this in, I got to open up different wallet, I got to sign it. Like you probably are a little bit less flippant in terms of like how quick. When we were sitting here waiting to start this podcast, I just bought a piece of art, actually two pieces of art on art exchange. If I only had Sol on my wallet, I wouldn't have done that. I probably would have like pocketed that. I would have gone home. They'd still be there, but I'd have like at least time to think about it and be more convicted in what I was doing because of that friction. So I think adding a little bit of friction in, can certainly help, but I think documenting your convictions is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. I mean, hey, that's great advice. I think that's like, I'm looking forward to, really, I want to feel like, because I had a moment in November of this past year where I said to myself after FTX happened and everything like that, it was the first time in my life where I was truly like mad at myself. And I said to myself, I'm like, Mark, you've been here since 2017 and you didn't learn. Like you didn't learn. You didn't take profit when things were euphoric and you got greedy. You really did. You got greedy. And I had to have an honest conversation with myself where I said, hey, like, you were really stupid and screwed up a lot of shit, and you have to be better moving forward, because if not, you're going to feel this pain again. And that pain sucked, And so, I try to remind myself of these core principles every day. And it's just something that, like, as we get into the next bowl, and once again, it feels like everything you touch is just rips. Okay, you still got to remind yourself of what was that pain like on the days where, you felt like you were, everything was going to zero. You got to remind yourself of those days, because the days that it's euphoric, the moment you find yourself taking a screenshot of your bag, being like, look how much I'm up, that's the moment you got to sell and get the fuck out. So, but Corey, so for everybody who doesn't know who you are, and by the way, if people haven't watched the first podcast episode with you, they should definitely go and check that out. That'll be linked in the bio below. But for people who don't know who you are, can you give a brief 30-second intro to yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm the CEO of Honeyland. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I've been building businesses for the last 20 years or so. Had a successful exit back in 2019 of a lot of things that I'd been building for many, many years, and moved myself into business coaching. I was working with executive teams of, $5 to $50 million companies, $5 to $50 million companies that are on a growth trajectory, helping them to really just organize all the energy in the leadership team and ultimately in the entire company in the same direction, getting vision, alignment, communication, accountability, all that stuff, and loved it. And somebody that I had had come in contact with through Entrepreneurs Organization back when I was running my own business back in like 2013, we first connected, and somebody I admired very much, Justin Barr, who's now a co-founder on this project. We had always kept in touch, and he reached out to me and said, hey, I've got this kind of cool idea. Another entrepreneur that I know is trying to put together reached out to a gaming studio. They're ready to build a game. He's got kind of this idea for a game. We just, I'm trying to kind of assemble a team. Is that something you'd be interested in? And because what business coaching it's a lot of investment, but it's like 2 days. It's very similar to your podcast, right? Where it's like a lot of like in between, but like the actual time that I'm coaching is like 2 days a week where I'm doing like all day coaching, but that leaves a lot of extra time. So I said, sure, let's see what this looks like, and wasn't sure where it would lead me. And then since, over the last 2 years, Honeyland has become my full-time thing. I'm no longer doing any business coaching, but was able to take a lot of what I learned, not only through entrepreneurship, but also through, and like building my own businesses, but then also coaching and being a part of like really, really successful businesses that are growing and leadership teams and helping them think through a lot of this stuff. I've been able to really apply towards this. And I think this is certainly the biggest opportunity of a business I've ever built, but certainly I think I'm the most capable that I've ever been as well. So it's a really, really fun project. And I think, I've always said that's one of the things I think that makes Honeyland different, is that this isn't just like a project for us. This is a business. Like, we're Web 2 founders that understand like really building a business that can be a lot of fun and can be in a really, really fun, cool space, which is this Web 3, and can take advantage of a lot of the psychology and the people and the mindset that exists in Web 3, but also can do it with the foundation of like a really, really solid business, knowing that we're setting goals, we have real accountability, we have real communication, like we're building things from first principles and just doing it in a really, really fun space. So
there we go.
Sorry, that wasn't 30 seconds.
No, totally fine. So, okay, so walk me through. So the last time you were here was when the game was getting ready to launch, but hadn't launched yet. So walk me through the timeline of like, since you last came on the podcast, walk me through what has happened since the game launch, everything like that.
Yeah, so timelines are important in Web3. We know that. So we had given ourselves a deadline of March 31st, and I had made a promise. I gave a vision speech back in January of this year where I kind of laid out what the year would look like. I talked about Q1 was going to be launch, Q2 was going to be optimized, Q3 was going to be grow, and Q4 would be scale. And we're still on track for all of that. But the idea was launch our token, launch our what we called our Hive Mind, which is kind of this like web app that assists players in the game and gives them a way to like organize and manage and strategize and do a lot of things outside of just like the mobile game that we're building. Kind of this really cool companion tool, and then launch the game. And so we did launch our token, we did launch the Hive Mind, but the game was going to be a month late. And so I had made a promise on that vision speech that I would donate $1,000 personally out of my own bank account, not the project, out of my own bank account for every week that we launched late, so that we would put real pain to the community and real pain to myself, but also helping people out along the way. So we ended up launching on April 30th. So we were 5 weeks late. I donated to 5 charities. I actually messed something up. I had to donate to got to donate to a 6th as well. So we donated to 6 charities that our community had deep involvement with, and it's a really, really cool thing that we got to do. But we did launch on April 30th, and the game went live. So we moved on that day what was different, because we'd been running in like alpha for 6 months at that time. November 2nd was the day that we launched our alpha. April 30th was the day that we launched our game. And so we'd been running for basically like 6 months with the community of like, several hundred of our like closest community playing this game every single day with no real like reward or anything. And that's kind of how we knew the game was fun. Like, they were playing it not to earn tokens or to progress, because everything that they had earned in that 6 months went away when we moved, and we moved to mainnet. And so we moved to mainnet. It was about a week later that we approved in the iOS and the Google Play Store in 183 countries around the world, or whatever it is. We ultimately ended up publishing to iOS and Google Play in just 5 select countries, strategic countries, to help us like work out some of the onboarding kinks and stuff like that. We landed on the Saga phone. We started ramping up our players. We went from like, a couple hundred daily actives to 1,000 to 1,500 to 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000. And, we were launching, we were working out kinks, and we pushed new builds constantly. And so this is one of the things I think our community loves. We have great communication. We have a really fun game to play. It's like really well built. And we update and iterate regularly. And so, for the last really like 3 months since April, end of April, what are we, April, May, June, July. Yeah. So like the last 3.5 months. In fact, it's been, I think, just under 110 days since we launched. We've just been kind of pushing new builds, making feature updates, kind of figuring out where we're at, and what kind of needs to be fixed to get us to that next level. So, we've gone through kind of that launch, we've gone through the optimize for the most part, and we're getting ready to really hit the grow. So we're about a month and a half late, but about ready to really start onboarding users, taking advantage of kind of what the team that we have, which is a core strength of ours, which is user acquisition, and then looking forward to getting a couple things fixed, taking this live, and then not taking this live, to getting to the place. There's kind of this onboarding experience is just a little bit broken, and so that's the thing that we're completely rebuilding from the ground up. And so once we fix that, we can really start onboarding and bring a ton more people into the ecosystem. So we're between 3,000 and 4,000 daily active users right now, which is cool and fun, but our goal is to get to 50 and 100 and eventually 1 million daily actives. So
there we go, man. There we go. No, it's been cool to watch, because and I think we probably talked about it on our first podcast episode. I'm going to be honest, I can't remember everything that we talked about, but when I first got into Web3, and I remember seeing the first like Web3 game, and I was like, man, this looks like dog shit. Like, this truly looks terrible. Like, why would anybody want to play this? But yet, like, as we were prepping for the podcast, we were just sitting here. Both of us were getting a little bit of work done. You were showing me, it's showing me different aspects of the game. You were showing me kind of some of the things that are coming soon. And I'm playing it. One of the mini games I'm playing, and I'm like, this is fun. This is like, I'm not saying, oh, this is cool because this is a Web3 game. I'm like, no, this is just cool, and it so happens to be a Web3 game. So walk me through, I guess, what were your objectives by this point? Have you hit them? Like, what were some of the things that in terms of like after the game is launched, what have you thought, okay, we thought we would hit this and we did, or we thought we would hit this and we didn't? Like, what are some of the different things that, I guess, goal-wise you've hit and haven't hit?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's right now when I look at this, we've been able to, through this kind of last couple of months of just like optimizing, we've been able to like learn a lot, both good and bad. And where I would say that we've learned and like validated what our assumptions or hopes were is that the game is really, really fun to play. And we have a lot of people who are sticking around and playing daily when they reach a certain level of like progress in the game. So, generally game speak is like day 1, day 7, day 30 users is where you start to think of this in like traditional mobile games. For us, I think of it more about the levels that you reach. So we have like, as you earn XP points and that kind of identifies a level. So level 6 XP, which is about that 5 to 7 day mark, and level 9 XP, which is about that 15 day mark. Those are two like critical numbers for us. And when players reach level 6, which means they've kind of done all the things and they've stuck around long enough to do that, there's a high probability that they reach level 9. When they reach level 9, they're spending a lot into the ecosystem, into the game. They're taking those tokens that they're earning, they're investing them back into breeding and upgrading and all the things that they can, purchasing more items and all the things that they can do in the game with those tokens to basically to advance their experience and to progress through the game and stuff. And so that's been incredibly positive. We've hit a lot of the goals and validated a lot of our hopes and assumptions there. We've also said from day one that user acquisition we're experts in. I have been in like Web 2 marketing all my life. I built a SaaS business. I built a digital marketing agency. I built a e-commerce store, and all of those did millions of dollars in revenues, before I ended up selling those businesses. And so I'm good at that. But Justin, particularly one of my other co-founders, really like his entire career was in like mobile ad tech and user acquisition, high volume acquisition for mobile ads and games. And so, he has, that was the second thing that we needed to validate. Like, can we go onboard users? And so we launched in those kind of strategic countries. It was Philippines and Indonesia and, India and eventually now Brazil and Italy. And there's about 7 countries that we're in now. And eventually we'll have global launch once we get things worked out. So we started to like connect all the pieces through AppsFlyer and all these things that you need to like collect that data and onboard users and start to basically like plug in your games to different systems, start to test ads and start to segment like onboarding experiences. And there's a lot of things that's involved in user acquisition. It's not just like go launch some Facebook ads, right? And so when you're doing it at like an incredibly high level. And so all this stuff is far beyond my pay grade to like know exactly what we're doing. But we were able to validate when I get the numbers back and I can see the scale and the cost, the assumptions that we had in terms of what we would need to do to onboard users was all there. Those are the things we've done really well. So we know that we can bring people to what I would call app installs. We know that we can do that on budget. We know that we can do it at scale. We know that we can do it at an incredibly high level. So when we talk about like getting to the next 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 users, I know that I can bring them to the table. I know that when I get players in the game and they're at level 6, I have a high likelihood of getting them to level 9. And when they get to level 9, they become extremely profitable for the ecosystem. Notably missing in there is getting people from install to level 6. And that's where the game we found out was broken. And part of this is because when we approached this Web3 like gaming ecosystem, we looked at the people who came before us that had a lot of success, but ultimately had fatal failures. And we wanted to fix those fatal failures. We wanted to build something that would be here in 3 years, that would be here in 9 years, that would be here in 15 years. And I don't know what it will look like in 15 years, but that Hexagon Studios and Honeyland would still be in existence and thriving in an incredibly meaningful way. And so in doing that, we needed to do a couple things differently. And part of that is you got to think about bots. You got to think about multi-accounts. You got to think about any time that you have the ability to earn within an ecosystem, that there's going to be people who want to exploit that and extract from the ecosystem. And if there's too high of an availability to extract, then people will flood in and they will essentially, you assume that everybody has good intentions, and it's entirely opposite. And it only takes a couple people with a lot of skills and bad intentions to come in and ruin your game. And so we were very protective of that early on. We built a lot of game mechanics to protect against that. But what we didn't do is we kind of protected so that the game wasn't fun early on. That protection meant that we didn't unlock enough of the game. And so we've completely reworked the mechanics, and mid-September, September 15th is our target date. We generally hit deadlines. If we don't, I generally end up donating a bunch of money to charity. But I'm not going to make that promise on this one. But I think there's a high likelihood that September 15th will launch with completely rebuilt onboarding mechanics that actually have a far better impact on the long-term sustainable impact of the ecosystem, and also a way more fun experience for brand new players to come into the game and start doing everything that experienced players can do. They're just earning a lot less. And so they're not really like impacting the ecosystem. And as long as they're investing that back into the ecosystem, they can continue to grow and progress through the game. So people who are there because they really want to play a fun game can do it, and it will graduate them into a position where they can ultimately, kind of earn and own assets and take advantage of a lot of the Web3 stuff.
So for people who don't know, because like for me, I don't know, I think about all these different like Web 2 games, right? And I think to myself all the time, I'm like, I don't always know how they monetize. Some, I think it's a little bit more obvious. They have a marketplace and people buy items on there and things like that. I've done that on a few different games that I've played. But
there's like Tap Sports Baseball is one where I was like, man, I gotta buy this, I gotta buy that, and next thing you know, I was like, I probably dropped $100 in this game, right? Pretty easy to see how they monetize. How do the majority, is that how the majority of Web2 businesses, mobile games, like how they monetize, or like how do the majority monetize, and then what is your game plan for monetization?
Yeah, traditional Web2 mobile games will monetize in one of two ways. It's either through advertisers or in-app purchases, right? So you may be able to buy gems or jewels in the game that allow you to unlock boosters or get new avatars or unlock levels or buy new skins or buy new game items. Like all those are in-app purchases. And then the other way, which is like the traditional, like, all the games my little daughters play, they have to, they play for 2 minutes and then they have to watch a 15-second ad, and then they play for 2 minutes and they watch a 15-second ad. And then I get a screenshot from my daughter that says, Dad, I want to buy this game. And she'll message that to me on Facebook and I tell her no. And then she goes back and plays her game. So like, that's how it works, right? Or you can pay to get the ad free. And so that's traditionally how mobile games will monetize. So for us, what we've done is we've built an ecosystem that basically allows players that this economy works on our HXD token. So it's a token that's traded on Radium, on decentralized exchanges. Hopefully before the end of this year, will be traded on centralized exchanges as well. A couple things that we're trying to get in line just to make sure we're doing that in an incredibly healthy and responsible way. And so that token is traded, but that is also the token that fuels the entire ecosystem. Now, when I talked about we wanted to learn from like the games that came before us, one of the things that's incredibly challenging to do, but I think incredibly crucial or necessary in order to build like a truly sustainable ecosystem, is that it needs to be a single token economy and it needs to have a fixed supply. It needs to be a deflationary token in nature. Too many games either had different tokens, like a governance token and a utility token, or they had tokens that they could mint endlessly. And so there was no like fixed supply, which when you just start to think about basic economics doesn't really work. And when you look at the tokens that are the thriving tokens in the crypto system right now, you look at Bitcoin, fixed supply, you look at Ethereum, which is deflationary in nature. You think like all those tokens that really work based on the sound tokenomics have those in place. And so I wanted to build a game that allowed us to do that. And so we will basically, you can earn that token in the game, you can buy that token in the game, you can buy that token on exchanges, but it's a fixed supply. And so that token will ultimately, as more and more players are coming into the ecosystem, as it becomes harder and harder to earn because you're sharing it with more and more players, the demand for that will go up. And ultimately, that is your token that unlocks happiness inside the game. So whether happiness for you is going to, buy more bees or upgrade your bees or breed more bees or buy things in the shop or go play in like other games that we have, like these other games, whether it's risking it against other players in the ecosystem where you can have like these PvP things where we're both risking our HXD, or whether that's taking that out of the ecosystem and selling it and going and buying dinner for your wife. Like all those are ways that you can get happiness. And essentially that HXD token is what will unlock that. So for us, everything that you're doing, you're spending so we're basically, you have the ability to earn that HXD token and then it gets spent back into the ecosystem. And we're taking that in to our treasury, and then we'll find ways to move that back into the market in really creative ways. We've got a lot of things that we're doing to do that, to make sure that we're not like competing with people on exchanges to try and like sell those. So we've got a number of kind of really cool ways that we can do that. But that's ultimately how we've got in-app purchases, and then we also have the token, which people are spending in the game and in the ecosystem, and that comes back to our treasury.
So, okay, so you mentioned before all this the onboarding experience and how like one of your biggest challenges is getting somebody to go from basically level 1 to level 6, right? So, and then you said that you guys are going to be relaunching kind of the whole onboarding experience, changing it up, making it different a little bit, and trying to get people to that level 6. So, walk me through like why has it been so hard? And you mentioned like it just basically you were kind of keeping it from being super fun so that people didn't just like farm it in order to, immediately just like take advantage of the ecosystem and the game and everything like that. So what are you changing up in order to make sure that you don't have people who take advantage of the game, but at the same time make it fun for people who day one come in and want to have fun playing a game?
Yeah. So this is, I want to try and like explain this for somebody who hasn't seen or played our game, right? Because that's the thing. So at the core in Honeyland, all you're doing is you have a colony of bees, you send them out on missions, you keep them busy, and they're coming back and they're bringing back tokens or they're bringing back items that can be used in the game. When they come back, they go through a cooldown, they're then idle and ready to go out on missions, and you send them out again. That's at the simplest level. At the most complex level, there's an insane amount of strategy that can be used to optimize those missions, to optimize how those bees are going out, to optimize the lands that they're going to, so that you can end up earning more, earning it in faster amounts of time. It can allow you to progress through the game quicker. The strategy that you use to upgrade those bees, to basically like manage the resources that you have in the game. So like there's this really simple element, which is just keep your bees busy. And then there's this much more complex element where the game becomes really, really fun. And so the challenge for us was like, how do you teach players all of these things that they can do? Like upgrade this very specific stat so that when they send this bee out on a mission with this bee, that they're going to both go out on the mission and complete it in the same amount of time, so that they're getting the mission boost for the entire time. Like insanely complicated, right? But like, how do we just make it fun to also just send out bees and get that experience, or that joy of like when your bee comes back, hitting that claim button and watching the tokens fly into your account. Like that's really cool too, right? And so what we did early on was we made it so that, like for me, when I play the game, I've got dozens or hundreds of bees. And a lot of our players who have been playing for a while, or once you reach level like 9, 15, you have a lot of bees. And the game is really fun when you have a lot of bees, when you can send different bees out on different missions. They're coming back at different times. There's kind of always things that you can do. The current onboarding or new player experience, you start with 3 bees, and they can only go out to like lands in zone 1, right? Which is, there's like 200 lands in zone 1. Well, when we started bringing on a lot of players, well, now you only have 3 bees. You can send them out on like one mission together, was the easiest way to do it. But they're on a land that we've brought in too many new players. And so now their missions take forever because they're competing with those other players. And so they couldn't go far enough. They didn't have enough assets. And so like you could literally come in for the first day. You only have 3 bees. The only thing you can do is set them out on a mission. And then you come back a couple hours later and nothing's happened. They're still just on the mission. Not fun, right? And so what we needed to do is we said, like, how is this game fun? The game's fun when you have a lot of bees. The game's fun when you can kind of organize them together. The game's fun when you're earning assets that you can upgrade them. The game is fun when you can start breeding, and you have this, like, every time you breed or hatch a bee, it's like this mint moment, right? Where like you get this bee and it gets cosmetically revealed. Does it have any cool traits on it? And then it, like, what are the utility stats on it and stuff? And so like all of those like elements of fun were missing early on. And so what we've done is we've basically created, and the bees that we would give new players, or that we give new players today when they come in, are called Z-Gen bees. They're not NFTs. They're just in-game items. They can't be sold or transferred. They're just tools in the game that you can use. And so we had to kind of limit those, but we also wanted to make it free to play. So what we've done now is we basically said, great, let's allow players, rather than having 3 and then eventually you can get to like 9 and you keep those forever, let's give you 10 and let you really quickly get to 30 by like breeding and hatching and all these things that are really, really fun. So you have a lot more bees to start doing these things, but let's just take it down so that they're earning almost nothing, but they also have a shop that items cost almost nothing, right? And so their buying power is the same, as long as whatever they're earning in the game, they're reinvesting back into the shop to buy items that they can use to upgrade their bees. And as they upgrade their bees, they extend their mission life. And then all of these bees have a time limit as well, so that instead of just living forever, after 90 days, they expire and they become part of like what we call the colony council, where you'll be able to like put them on a colony council. They're no longer even in-game items. They're just kind of like cards basically. And that will give boost back to like your queen, right? And so your queen kind of controls like how your bees go and stuff. And so it's this thing where basically the 2 things that we did is we basically said, let's make it so that they can earn almost as if they were like one of these level 15 players, and they can breed and they can hatch and they can upgrade and they can do all these things, but it's an item that can't be bought or sold. It doesn't have any value or extraction value. And as they're earning very, very little. So they're not actually pulling from the ecosystem, but we're giving them a buying power that becomes the same as somebody if they were earning a lot. And so it fixes like kind of this economy or ecosystem problem, but also allows them to have a lot more fun early on. So there's just a lot more to do. We've shrunk the mission time so that like they have like certain mechanics. So you may have bees that come back after like 5 minutes or 10 minutes and they already have a reward, right? And then they go through their cooldown and then they're ready to send back out. And so giving players just a lot more activity, and allows us, when they're sending them out on way more missions, allows us to train them about all these little things about like how you can match bees on with the right lands and with the right queens and with the right bees to make the most out of these missions and stuff. And so I hope I knew the challenge of that question was going to be to make that interesting. Hopefully I made it interesting, but the idea is that we gave new players, instead of restricting what they can do, we gave them the ability to do way more, except they can't earn quite as much.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, okay. So then what I want to get into from there is like, So in terms of the game, when I think of these games, one of the hardest parts is sometimes you go, is it too complicated, right? So walk me through, like, if somebody is new to the game, I feel like one of the other onboarding experiences is how do you figure out how to play, right? And so when I think about like a game that I've downloaded, a first-person shooter is pretty easy, right? Something comes at you, you shoot it, or they shoot you, right? Pretty simple. If you can't understand that, hard to go any further than that, right? When somebody plays a basketball game or a football game or something like that, if you've played the sport before, it's pretty easy to understand how that works, right? So then when I think about the games that are a little bit more complicated, whether it's a strategy game or like even the first time I played something like, I don't know, Wordle. I'm like, okay, what am I trying to do? Oh, I'm just trying to spell this word. Okay. Oh, I see now. When I get a letter, okay, that means it's the right, I have that letter, it's just not in the right spot, yada, yada, yada. You figure it out pretty quick. That's not overly complicated, right? So how do you onboard somebody and also explain to them all the different game mechanics and get to the point where they can confidently play without feeling overwhelmed by all the different game mechanics that there are?
Yeah. So there's, I think, two things. So the first thing that I realized that I didn't realize before building this game is that we are teaching people a new language, period. The way the icons look, the way that the button, the names you give items in the game, the tutorial, how and when you introduce things, like we're teaching people a language, and everything that you do has an impact on how easy or difficult it is to understand that language. And so, I first thought that it was like, yeah, you just launch this game and then we just got to give them the right tutorial steps. And then you realize like, no, like when you unlock things will also help to make that language a lot easier. So if you start teaching like future tense verbs, I don't even know if that's a thing, but before you start teaching just like propositions or, like basic nouns, like it's that language just won't make sense. And so like doing things in the right order and making sure that it all comes together from, the way that we have our white paper written to the way that the icon is named to the way that the tutorial, introduces things. All of those become a part of that language. So I think that's definitely part of it. And then the second part is, and this exists certainly in Web 2, but I think it's a really strong part of Web 3, but it's just the community, right? And like, so you can come into our Discord. We had lunch earlier with JW and when I was out at Solana Summerfest with him, I was telling him, I was like, hey, he's kind of asking some questions. I said, hey, listen, just go into our Discord and start asking questions and you'll get all the answers. And he hit me up and he's like, yo, you weren't kidding. Like, I just went into your Discord. I just started asking some questions and like everybody was there. You have content creators that are like, we have a handful, probably 5, 6, 7 content creators that like regularly pump out new videos all the time. And if a community comes or the questions start popping up at a community, they do that, right? And so like, I think you have the community as one way that we onboard and teach people, and then just trying to like really understand the game or treat the game like a language and make sure that it makes sense for somebody. And then it's cool because I have people like my mom and my wife and, all these people in my life that aren't traditional gamers, but my mom, loves the game Wordle. And so like, how can I make it so that she'll spend time on games, on mobile games? How do I make sure that she's spending time on Honeyland and make sure that it's simple enough for her to understand, fun enough for her to play, easy enough for her to progress through and all that stuff. And so, it's just a lot of kind of like user testing, but yeah, I don't know.
Does it almost, okay, so here would be my idea, and I'm just brainstorming out loud. Does it make sense to have a mode where like the beginner is almost like easy mode, where it's like, hey, you get these bees, and as you do something, there's going to be like a little help bubble that pops up and says, here's the benefit to you doing what you just clicked. Here's why that like isn't a great idea. And then do you want to still do that? Right. And almost where it's almost giving them the help of like understanding why, there's a fire department's here. There's a bunch of firefighters just walk behind us. Hopefully the building doesn't burn down. But the, does it make sense to have an option where somebody can basically look at this and go, okay, now I know why I would do this or why I wouldn't do this, because there's almost like this, maybe it's a helping bee that kind of like helps you learn the game and learn like why you should do certain things, why you shouldn't do certain things, and I guess like more or less like spoon feed it to you.
Yeah, so there's first of all, absolutely. So one thing we're doing is we're building an easy mode or like we're calling it a simple mode, so that like when you go to send your to find a land to choose that you want to send your bees out on a mission. Right now, there's like honey production speed and how many bees are harvesting on a land and commissions and entry fees and drop times and all these different stats, the landform type, whether to the climate, like, and all these things matter to somebody who knows what the heck they're doing, but can be like, turn somebody cross-eyed if they don't. And so we're building an easy mode or a simple mode as well as that normal mode. And so it'll just be like, is it green? Is it yellow? Or is it red? Right? Stay away from the red ones. Go to the green ones. So that's one thing that we're building that will really help like onboard players. And then they can like toggle between, so they can be like, why is this one green? And why is this one yellow? And why is this one red? Right? And it will like kind of help to introduce that. The other thing that we're doing is right now we are training a GPT model to basically, we're feeding it every part of our game, from the strategy to the white paper to the, we've written this thing that we call the Bee Bible. We're lining it up with our Discord so that we have just kind of like a lot of the community information. And so we're feeding this, and in the game, there's this, you have the hive as like your home base, and you have a queen bee that sits in there. That's your queen, that's your active queen. And there's this little helper that sits in there. And so that little helper ultimately will be an AI chat model or an AI chatbot that you'll be able to ask any question to just like a human, and it will be able to spit out an answer just like a human as well. So if you want to know like, hey, what makes land 421 a green land right now? It'll basically be able to look at that and tell you what makes that good and what makes that bad. And so rather than, you know, and again, I go back to this like language thing, and it's like, if I try and just teach you a language and teach everybody a language the exact same way, it's going to be challenging. But if I allow you to kind of ask me the questions that you need, and then I just start answering those one at a time, I think we can have everybody kind of learn differently based on what's interesting for them to learn. And so,
no, that's super cool, because that to me is always one of the most important things, because like there's certain ways everybody learns a little bit different, but like when somebody's confused by something, the odds they stay playing that and everything like that go to almost zero, right? Because it's like, if it's confusing, you're just like, you know what, screw it, I'm out, right? And obviously when you know, the name of the game is user retention, and it's like, okay, if they're overwhelmed right off rip, then they're just probably gonna end up leaving, right? So I think it's really cool to see how you're utilizing AI to figure out how to solve that problem of, you know, bringing in people, educating them, and making it where they can feel confident when they play, because that's the most important thing. It's the same thing of like when I was editing my podcast to begin with, right? I almost used one of my best friends as like ChatGPT in that situation, right? I was constantly having to ask him, you know, hey, okay, this issue just popped up. How do I solve that, right? Now that I'm confident when I'm editing, I can edit so much quicker because I can confidently, I know what I'm doing, right? Same thing with a game. How do you get them to that point where they feel confident in the decisions they're making, the strategy they're playing, and everything like that? So
yeah, I'll also go back to like, for me, as more like what I would call myself, like, you know, kind of the CEO of the project, but like kind of the game director. I'm not necessarily the game designer. I don't write all the formulas, but I'm really deeply in tune with all this stuff. I work with our UI and UX team. I work with our art team. I work with every team very, very closely. And, one of the things that I try and think about is, when the first iPhone came out, in fact, every iPhone that's ever existed, there's never been an instruction manual. It's probably the most useful and complex device that most of us have, and we've never had an instruction manual because it just made sense, right? There was one button, like when you first got your iPhone, it was just that circle button, right? And like the only thing you could do was push that, and then it says welcome, right? And then it says, great, now do this, and like everybody would immediately figure this entirely new thing out that they just made it so simple. And they again, that was a language that they just learned how to perfectly communicate. So I think when we do this really well, that question becomes more like the iPhone than like needing a chatbot. But yeah, it's we're not there yet. I'm not Steve Jobs, and we have a long ways to go. But yeah, it's really about trying to treat this like a language and make it as easy to learn as possible.
Yeah, I mean, the UI experience is definitely something that, like, you know, when people talk about like why does Apple, you know, outperform Android in so many different ways, even though Android tends to, you know, kind of innovate faster than Apple does, it's because Apple makes it an easier onboarding experience. So you feel more comfortable with what you're doing by using the Apple UI, you know, and that's my opinion. There could be somebody who's listening to this who's an Android person who's like, screw that. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think that the average person probably looks at the Apple UI as, this is just super simple, super clean, and it's easy for me to understand. And so therefore I don't feel overwhelmed. So you can have the 12-year-old kid who knows how to operate the phone, same as a, you know, 40-year-old person, same as a 70-year-old person, right? And when you can kind of speak that language and teach that language to multiple different generations, then you make it easier for them to explain it to somebody else, right? So,
Absolutely.
Okay, so I want to get into the, in terms of the, game, what is the like long-term vision with it? Is it, because you were telling me earlier before we started the podcast that you guys are working on some of these different like mini games, right? That are not really Honeyland. They're like almost like Honeyland mini games, essentially. One of them is actually very similar to Wordle. And so I was playing that game before we started. It's very fun. And so cool UI experience and everything like that. So what is the goal with having mini games? Is it just to, is the end goal to have people playing the game for just longer periods of time, or like what is the end goal with retention and with just people playing the games in general?
Yeah, so where you started that question, which is like what's the bigger vision of Honeyland, I want to get back to that because it's to build the future of Web3 gaming. It's to build the blueprint that other Web3 games will follow. I want to answer where you ended that question, which is kind of like, what is the game mall? We've kind of come to coin this the Honeyverse or the game mall. The idea is that Honeyland it's at the end of the day, it's an idle game, right? You send your bees out on missions. They go out on missions. You're not doing anything while they're on missions. They come back. They go through a cooldown. They're then idle again. You then send them out on a new mission. And so we wanted our players to have something to do in between those missions. And so we're like, well, let's go out and let's go find some really, really fun games. Let's build those. And then let's see how Web3 can make those really popular Web2 games better. So the first two, we've launched one game inside of our app, it's called Bumble Bash. It's like this like whack-a-bee game, and we're doing like little live tournaments in our Discord. There's daily tournaments that you can get like rewards for Honeyland. There's you can like play for like it's an easy way to like get shards. So even if a new player that doesn't have a lot of bees, they can go play these game mall games, and then they're earning things in Honeyland. So it kind of gives an advantage to newer players, and just gives them more like things that they can do. Then we want to like build things that are just different. They're just better than what exists today. And so Web3 brings a lot of really cool things. I think the biggest things that I would say is the ability of ownership of assets. And when I say ownership, I really mean like custody, because we own things in Web2 games. We just don't custody them, which means we can't sell them and move them. Which brings me to the second kind of real advantage, which is the ability to build like peer-to-peer marketplace transactions, like economy, right? So like I can sell this item to you, you can sell it to me, I can buy it from you. And so I think that's really cool that Web3 brings. And the idea of like this transferable assets, whether it's tokens or NFTs or whatever. And so we're like, well, how can we use that in like these really fun games like Wordle or like, like Words with Friends, or not Words with Friends, something like Candy Crush or things like that are like these games that millions of people play. And so I was like, well, what if, like I love this idea of playing games, but I love the idea of playing games with something waged on it, like way more. What if we could bring like this DraftKings model where you're like playing other players, but like for real money or real tokens or real assets in the game? And so what we're doing is we're building this game mall that will allow players to, it's kind of these active games, and you could play just for fun. In our game, you don't have to play for like, it's free to play and all that stuff. But if you wanted to, you and I could go, hey, you like that what's called word puzzle? You like word puzzle? I think I can get a better score than you. Let's risk 100 HXD each, and the winner takes 190. Honeyland gets 10 of them. The loser walks away sore. We screenshot it. I say that I beat you, and we walk away, right? And I just think it creates a lot more fun. And so we're trying to build more just like kind of active gameplay games. I think what it does is when we build this like more gaming ecosystem, all fueled by like essentially the Honey token, the HXD token is the thing that like will help you to like buy more turns, or the thing that we're risking, or the things that will buy you boosters, or all these types of things that we can just start to push the boundaries a lot more. And we can have a lot more fun with like, what does Web3 gaming truly look like? It doesn't just have to be play to earn. If you build really, really fun games and build in really cool mechanics, I think there's really cool ways that we can kind of push the boundaries. And so I think that's kind of the vision of kind of the building these other mini games, is that it gives more active gameplay. And then the other huge advantage is that it creates on-ramps into Honeyland. So in the same way that Honeyland will on-ramp into those games will on-ramp into Honeyland. And so it's way easier to sell somebody on a Wordle game, a Wordle style game that has some different mechanics. We're putting like time to it and score and things like that. And and daily tournaments. Like we just launched that game versus the regular New York Times Wordle. I think there's going to be a lot of people that we can go out and make it look cool and feel cool and have these kind of additional mechanics that we've made it better. And, but with kind of similar mechanics, we make that better. I think that we can onboard, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people into that game. And those become people now that we can feed into, now that they start to work with this token economy and things like that, we can feed into Honeyland as well. And so it becomes a much more accessible point into kind of Web3 gaming, which ultimately is what we're trying to build, this end-to-end Web3 gaming experience that feels completely Web2 from end to end, that you never know you're in a Web3 ecosystem if you don't want to.
Yeah. So, okay. So speaking of that, one of the things that when you're in a Web3 ecosystem, a lot of times you spend a lot of time in Discord, right? But there's obviously some people who absolutely hate Discord. So when you guys do like new announcements and things like that for the game, whether it's a change you're making to the game or something along those lines, how do you notify people? Do you guys do like push notifications? Do you guys do Discord announcements? Like, and what has traditionally worked the best? And how do you kind of measure, I guess, like how are people digesting this information, and are we getting it to them in a position where they can actually digest it and they know what's going on in the game?
Yeah. So, we of course, Discord is a big part of like our community and our mods, and we've got an awesome, thriving Web3 Honeyland community inside of Discord. I at least once a week do video updates that are usually like 5 to 10 minute updates that talk about all the things that are going on this week and that we're building. Oftentimes I'll do a second video in the week. Every other week I do live, what I call office hours, where it's live streamed. I take all the questions from the community throughout the week. That's all done live on YouTube. So all these updates get published as videos from me on YouTube. They get shared in Discord. And we'll use Twitter for announcements and things like that as well. We have, because not everybody's even on those, but like Twitter and YouTube are Web2 tools. They're not necessarily Web3 tools. Discord is very much, I would consider, far more Web3. But we have like a full in-game notification system. We've built in push notification system. So I can alert a global set of users, a segment of users, or an individual user with an in-game notification or a push notification at any given time. And so like when I talk about like really building a business, like we're building something that allows us, and I talk about like user acquisition and user retention and all that stuff. Like our team are experts. And part of that means that you need to be able to like have direct messaging and calls to action and reminders and things like that. The notifications are a huge part of engagement and getting people to like, hey, your bees, all of your bees are idle and ready to go on missions. Like you need to be notified of that, right? And so like we have a really, really intricate strategy to build the notification system that'll work really well. But for like announcements and stuff like that, yeah, it can all be done in game, which is really, really cool. And we'll really push the limits of what we can do there too, to make it fun, but also make it very useful.
So, okay, so when obviously the name of the game too is getting obviously a ton of people to play the game. So what are the like most traditional ways that people advertise like a standard typical mobile game, and what have you guys done so far, and what has worked, and how are you guys advertising it, and who are you advertising to, and all those sort of things?
Yeah, so I'm going to be a little bit opaque here for two reasons. Number one, it's slightly beyond my pay grade, and number two, it's kind of our secret sauce. I believe that when it comes to like onboarding the next 50,000, 100,000, 500,000, million users, there's like zero fears that we can accomplish that in an incredibly reasonable way. The only thing is we need to do it in a responsible manner so that we are not wasting money and that we're doing it in a way that doesn't shock the ecosystem, right? If I brought in 50,000 players tomorrow, number one, we don't have that level 1 or day 1 to level 6 bridge fixed. So we'd end up spending way more money than we should be spending. And number two, let's say we had, 10,000 of those stuck around, it would shock the ecosystem. There's a progress of how we need to grow. And so, but yeah, I mean, we do it through, I think discoverability in every major app store worldwide is a huge part of this. So right now I mentioned we're in, I think 7 or 8 countries around the world in iOS and Google Play Store. That's by choice, not by like couldn't be in US tomorrow if we wanted to. We're approved to be in 83 countries, every country around the world except for South Korea. So, which requires just additional like certification or something that you need to do. So, but every other country around the world, we could be in at the push of a button. As soon as we figure out and fix that day 1 to level 6 onboarding process, we'll really start to scale up. We'll launch in a lot more countries. And we've got partnerships with a lot of different, gaming platforms, and there's a number of really cool things that we can do, performance marketing and things like that. Again, our user acquisition team I have 3 full-time user acquisition people on my team. We're not even bringing users on right now, but we're building out, when I talk about the notification systems, everything that we've linked, all the apps flyer, all the data. I get weekly reports of everything that we're doing. We have things broken down so granularly and segmented, it would blow your mind. It is incredibly, incredibly detailed. And as we start to scale up, that will become one of our absolute secret weapons.
Okay, so when we talk about like the countries that the game is available right now, does that mean it's not currently available in the U.S. or like how does that work? Because I know that like what I've seen previously, and I'm not a genius on all this stuff, so educate me real quick. Is that I feel like at certain times when somebody comes out with an app, it's via the Test Flight app on Apple. So how does all that work, and like how do you go from like being in the Test Flight section of things to being actually in the Apple App Store?
Yeah, super cool question. So. Right now, if you go to honey.land, which is our website, you'll see two buttons, click for Google or click for Apple. If you're in one of those 7 or 8, I don't know what it is. Let's just call it 7 countries for now. If you're in one of those 7 countries, you'll be directed to the Google Play or the Apple iOS store where you can directly download from the app stores. If you're in any other country around the world, you'll be either taken to basically download Test Flight, and then you can download the game through Test Flight if you're on iOS, or you can you'll download the APK and you can directly load it on your Android device. So anywhere in the world can play our game right now on mainnet. You're playing the exact same game against the exact same players. The only difference is if you download through Test Flight or sideloaded APK, you can't do any in-app purchases. So we haven't even touched on this, but one of the groundbreaking things that we did that, to my knowledge, there's no other game in the world or app in the world that's ever done this yet. But we launched, as I mentioned, on like April 30th, and it was a week later that we were approved through the iOS and Google Play Store. We pushed to very select countries. For those countries right now, they can purchase our HXD tokens in the app as an in-app purchase. And so if they don't want to, they're not a Web3 person, but they want, and they can earn tokens in the game, but they want to speed that up. They don't know how to go buy tokens on the centralized or on Radium, set up a wallet, fund that wallet, go buy tokens on Radium, deposit them into their game account, but they want to get more HXD tokens. How do they do that? They can do it directly as an in-app purchase in our game. And so they want to buy $5 worth of tokens, $20 worth of tokens, $50 worth of tokens. They can do that directly in the app. There's no other game in the world that I'm aware of that is a Web3 game that allows people to buy a cryptocurrency using Apple Pay with an iOS approved app in the app. Now, if you're not in one of those 7 countries right now, you won't be able to do that. The in-app purchase doesn't work, but we'll be shortly in every country around the world, and you'll have the ability to actually buy HXD, buy our cryptocurrency in the app with Apple Pay or Google Pay.
So isn't one of the current drawbacks, so educate me on this, isn't one of the current drawbacks on in-app purchases on Apple products is that essentially you get hit with like what? It's like a 30% fee. So how do you work around that? If somebody's purchasing, essentially crypto through your game, purchasing a cryptocurrency that is, utilized in the game, how do you work around a 30% fee?
Yeah. So, and I'll talk on this as long as you want, because I think there's more things that we're doing when it comes to like marketplace and things like that. I want to make sure we get into that today, but let me answer that question directly. So, if you purchase, let's say $5 of HXD, what we actually do is we give you like $3.50 worth of HXD, and then we give you what would be equivalent to like $1.50 worth of like in-game items. And so we're actually, because we're only taking basically $3.50 worth of tokens out of our treasury, we're collecting the full $5. We can pay Apple their $1.50. So now we're taking in that exact $3.50 to move $3.50 worth of tokens into your game account. And then we give you, so that you don't feel like you've been cheated, we give you $1.50 worth of other assets that we have the ability to, they're in-game consumables. So you're going to consume those anyways. It's not like we're building it in, something that you can go sell somewhere else or do something like, well, you could technically, they have value. But the idea is that we can mint those items without having a cost to those items. So again, there's a number of things that if you just pull back and you're like, hey, how do we take the rules that exist? How do we creatively, rather than just saying like, okay, charge 30% more, or, these kind of lazy things that people, or we just can't do it. How do we do it? Let's just think like really creatively. Let's start to think about this. And so that was one of the things that we were able to do. We're like, we can give them $5 worth of value, but only $3.50 worth of tokens. So they're not getting cheated. Apple gets their fees. And because you can buy our HXD as an in-app purchase in the game, it's okay that people can actually also buy it on an exchange and deposit it into the game on their behalf. And so that's one of these crazy things that Apple has, that as long as you can buy that asset in the game, you're allowed to also buy it outside of the game.
That's very cool. I didn't know any of that. I was always wondering how people, like, what was the workaround then for the 30% fee? Because I know that's the number one thing that everybody bitches about, especially when it comes to Web3 gaming.
So let's talk about I don't know if this is where you wanted to go, but StepN right now has the ability. They basically launched this thing that caught a lot of attention, where you can buy their NFTs in the app now. And what they do is they basically created a new token that you can buy that token. and I think it's, $1 for 10 of those tokens or something like that. And then they do a conversion. So if something's listed for $10 worth of SOL on a marketplace, you need $13 worth of that token in order to buy it, right? Actually $14. They have a little markup as well. So that basically they can then pay the person on the marketplace the $10 worth of the token. They can pay Apple the 30% and they take a little bit. But the person inside the app is paying $14 for a $10 thing. So our goal has always been this. I want end to end the game to be a completely Web3 game and feel completely Web2 to anybody who doesn't want it to feel this way. I use my mom as an example. I always do. She's somebody who's very tech savvy. She loves mobile games. All that stuff, but does not want to set up a crypto wallet, doesn't any of that stuff. So discoverable in every major app store around the world, right? Let's fast forward 60 days. We'll be in US. She'll be able to she'll be able to go to the iOS store, download Honeyland from the iOS store. Great. Now, how about setting up an account? Okay, well, you can log in with either Google or Apple ID. You can also, if you have a Phantom or Soulflare wallet, you can log in with those, but you'll create an account with just a Google ID. She logs in. We create a non-custodial wallet on the back end for her. She never has to know that exists, but it is a wallet that's tied to her account just so that she has it because it is a Web3 game. So now she downloaded an iOS, she signed in with Google, and she's now playing. She can start earning this stuff. What we're working on right now, and this is still being built, so I believe that we'll get here, but this is kind of alpha. But hey, listen, I like to talk transparently, and if we don't get exactly here, we'll be somewhere near here. But the idea is that we're working right now with Magic Eden so that HXD will be an acceptable SPL on Magic Eden, which means we can take their order book, we can bring it into our game, and we can allow people in our game to purchase NFTs with their HXD. So now let's take my mom, right? She can find it in iOS. She can sign in through Google. She can buy HXD. If she goes to the marketplace, she wants to buy an NFT that she just thinks is a B. She doesn't even know it's an NFT, but she wants to buy that B and it costs, 300 HXD. She doesn't have that much in her account. So she goes to the in-app purchase. She can buy enough HXD to get there. She just bought cryptocurrency. She didn't know that. She did it with her credit card. She goes to our marketplace in the game on her mobile phone. She buys that. We take the HXD out of her account. We pay for that. We make sure that the seller gets paid. She now owns an NFT that's sitting in her cryptocurrency wallet, and she never had any idea that she was engaging with cryptocurrency or NFTs or anything like that. She just thought it was a Web2 game. The final piece of that becomes the when I talk about end-to-end, becomes the off-ramp as well. So let's say she then uses that B to go earn more HXD, and now she wants to say, hey, this is a cryptocurrency. This thing actually has value. She doesn't know how to go put that in a wallet, trade it on exchange, put it in a centralized exchange, put it into her bank account. So we're working with a payment provider right now that is an off-ramp payment provider as well, that she'll be able to then move that directly, sell that HXD, and it will all take place in the background, sold into an exchange and moved into our bank account. And so this is where we talk about, like, how do you get the next 100,000 million players coming into a game? How do we be able to go into like a Web2 marketplace, like the iOS store, get people to come into our game at scale? And as long as the game is insanely fun to play, like, she's not signing signatures, she's not dealing with cryptocurrency, she doesn't know she has NFTs, doesn't know what Phantom is, like, none of that stuff really exists in the game, but she has the ability to mint NFTs, buy NFTs, trade HXD, like all that stuff. So that's really the vision of what we're building, and it always has been. When I talked about, said like, what's the vision of Honeyland? To build the future of Web3 gaming. We want to build a blueprint from our tokenomics to how we build the in-game token purchase, to how we build the in-game marketplace that other projects can look at and go, holy shit, they figured it out. And that we're able to build and onboard, the next 100,000 million. Our goal would be that we can next year get 2 million Phantom wallets added to the ecosystem through what we're building. I think that's really doable with the game that we've built and the systems that we're architecting.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's super, super cool. And it's cool to see, I guess, like, how you're finding some of these problems with Web3 gaming and actually solving those. Because I think a lot of times one of the things that's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way about some of the Web3 games is, like, they almost like act like some of these problems aren't a thing. And it's like, at the end of the day, if we don't attract new people to the game, then we're never going to grow Web3 gaming. It's never going to become an actual thing. And, like, if it's always this little niche market where only people who hold, these NFTs or only people who know about Web3 gaming are the ones who are actually playing the game, then your market's so niche until we're in, like, an absolute gigantic bull market. And it's like, okay, so then what? The game just dies during the bear? Like, that doesn't make much sense, right? So it's cool to see how you guys are solving some of these problems. the next thing I want to get into is like, obviously you have the NFTs that have a floor price and you guys kind of have to manage that. And then now you have the token that you have to manage. And so how do you operate on like making sure that like, you know, obviously when floor price is up, people are happy. When, you know, token price is up, people are happy. But when, you know, when you have a play to earn game, obviously the token price becomes a major aspect of things, because people want to see that the token that they're earning is going up in value. So how do you look at all of this stuff in terms of managing the floor price of the actual NFT and then the token in itself?
Wow. Yeah. So what I've realized, and I knew this at an early stage of this project, when we were even like pitching investors back in 2020, like early 2022, that like, we're not just a game. We're also an NFT project, and we're also a token project, right? And so it's really like running 3 projects at once. It's like having 3 kids, you know, that you like, one's doing really well, but the other one's struggling in school, and you're like, okay, so where do you put your attention? And so it is this challenge. It's also, makes it incredibly fun. And I think that we have this huge advantage in that, number one, we have a product, which is the game. At the end of the day, we are a gaming project. But the NFT project can benefit from the token can benefit from the game can benefit from the NFTs, and it can work the other way around as well. And so when, you know, we see one of our, you know, the token struggling a little bit, great. How do we then use the NFTs? A really good example. So the token's been the biggest challenge for us to this point. And part of this is because like you need, and I've always talked about this, like you need incredibly sane mechanics on the front end. So I talked about the fixed token or fixed supply token. It's deflationary in nature. It's a single token economy. You need all of that from the basic fundamentals. But then there's 2 other things that you need. You need utility for that token, and you need demand for that token, right? And demand is created by more players coming into the ecosystem, more people wanting that token, whether it's for speculative or for utility reasons, but more eyeballs, more liquidity essentially. And then you need more utility so that there's more ways that players can spend. So you talk about like, we're launching the game mall, right? More games means more ways, not only more on-ramps, but also more ways to spend. And so, you know, we're working on this. And I think when we get to September 15th and we have the onboarding mechanics like fixed, and we're able to really start ramping up our user acquisition, and we get into like this Q4 where we can, I think, you know, confidently get into tens of thousands, if not 6 figures of daily active users. Again, it's just about like, how quickly can we do it without shocking the game? But we'll have the ability, we'll have the product and the ability to get to those levels. But you have these things that can really help each other out. And I think this is one of the biggest advantages that most projects don't have. So we did a land mint back in, like a month and a half ago or something. I don't know. And it was to get like the second half. I know all these dates like hard fixed. I don't know why. This one moved. Oh, it moved because of it was July 7th. So it moved because of the SMB barrel mint or whatever. And so like Magic Eden was like, yo guys, you don't want to be competing with that week. Like just push it back. So we pushed it back. So we did it July 7th, and we were minting the 2,000 lands that went or we were opening up the second half of Universe 1. There was 4,000 total lands. We'd already minted the first 2,000 on December 21st. Told you September 21st. December 21st was our Generations mint. And we had these 2,000 other lands that we were going to mint. And so, man, if the token's struggling, what do? Well, you go, well, let's just mint in HXD. So we reached out to Magic Eden. I said, hey, listen, I want to mint in our own SPL on Magic Eden. They said, okay. I said, but what I want to do is I want that to be the pre-sale. We're going to make our whitelist only to people who reached level 5 XP in the game. So, and if you reach level 10, you could mint, I think 3 instead of 2 or something like that. So like now the whitelist becomes about, you have to play. There's no bots or all this stuff. Like that's how you get whitelist. And then we said, great, if the token's struggling, we need more utility for it. Let's just make it so that the only way that you can mint. Now, what did that mean to us? It meant that we left several $100,000 on the table that we could have collected an actual SOL that we could have sold for USDC. We collected in our own SPL token instead, which we can't move that right now. There's no intent to move that or anything like that. So we sacrificed several $100,000, but in doing so, we created a healthier token. So you can see where these projects, that's the NFT project helping out the token. We, throughout that mint, and I think because we did it in HXD instead of doing it in like Sol or anything like that, we didn't actually mint out. And so we're left with, of that collection, 592 pieces that by the time we closed the mint, just a couple hours after it started, we ended up with 592. They're land tickets. So the land tickets can be revealed for the land. The land ticket is already assigned to a land, but you don't know what it is yet. You just know like very small details. And it was this kind of, anyways, it was a fun gamified way that we did this. So we have these 592 land tickets. So we're like, okay, what do we do with those? Great. I know exactly what we're going to do with them. So we are going to, because we want to like one of the challenges here was that what if we have 10,000 Web 2 players that don't know how to go to Magic Eden to mint, right? Even to get their HXD into a Phantom wallet connected. So we're like, we've got to be able to do this in the game. And so we're going to do, and then the other problem was that the land was, the floor place on the land was 15 SOL. And so like, how do you mint a new collection at 15 SOL worth of HXD? You can't do it much higher or else you're probably not going to mint out. You can't do it much lower or else it dilutes the value of the existing collection. So it was like this challenge. So we minted at like 14 SOL worth of HXD, which is a lot of HXD that you needed. And so that was kind of the other problem, was that it was just a really expensive mint. And so we're like, how do we make this more accessible? Okay, so let's just do in-game land raffles. So at the end of this month, we'll push a new game build. And in that game build, we will have the ability to start to do land raffles. So we're going to take 3 of those land tickets every single day for 30 days. We pull aside 90 of those, and we're going to do in-game land raffles. All it takes is 10 HXD. That's like 25 cents to get a land ticket. And you can get up to 30 land tickets per person. So a whale can't come in and just buy this whole thing up. But it allows our most, like, anybody from any country can earn 10 HXD and can put it towards a land ticket and has the ability to actually earn an NFT. Again, completely Web 2 mechanics. You're not signing signatures. You're not doing anything like that. So we're doing that. And then what about the other 500? Well, the other 500 we're going to do in-game as a shop item. And so if you have at least 6,500, I think is going to be the number of HXD. If you have 6,500 HXD in your in-game account, then you have the ability for this to show up. We have like this daily shop where you have like this new item show up every single day randomly. One of the items that shows up in your shop for those days may be a land that you can actually go purchase a land in HXD in the game. And so like, I think part of this is us really pushing like Web 2 and Web 3, like really being the bridge, not just talking about like, hey, it's got to be fun like a Web 2 game, and it's got to like, but actually building the mechanics in a game that somebody like my mom can come in and do everything that a Web 3 degen can do in the game, but then also really leveraging these things. So again, 6,500 HXD, you have to have that in your game account if you want a chance to be able to buy it for this to show up in the shop, which means if there's 500, that we have available to do with that mechanic, and we can get 1,000 or 2,000 people that have 6,500 HXD in their in-game account, it becomes a really cool kind of utility, but also locking mechanism. And so we can use the NFT in that situation. We're literally using the NFT, the game, and the HXD all to come together to strengthen each other and to create a better Web 2 experience. So I think that's kind of some of the things that we're doing. But yeah, managing 3 projects is tough, man. It's got a lot of advantages, but it also has a lot of it comes with challenges because there are 3 separate projects that each require their own individual attention to keep them all healthy. And no matter how good 2 are doing, if one's struggling a little bit, that tends to be where all the focus goes on from the community side of things. And so you want all 3 moving in the same direction, and you want that direction being up and to the right generally.
What do you feel like as a founder you've learned about yourself throughout all this process, right? Because I feel like, juggling all of this, like no matter what you thought you were going to be doing, I don't think anybody can completely say, oh, I for sure thought I would be doing this, or I thought this would work out this way or whatever. Like I think when you become a founder, like you truly have no clue all the different hurdles that are going to come your way, all the different challenges and everything like that. So as a, yourself as a person, like what have you learned the most about yourself, or what have you had to adapt the most to as a project founder?
I think that I learned that I'm in my prime. I've run a lot of businesses for 20 years, and I've never been at, like, if 6 years ago I would have had the challenges that this project had brought to me, I don't think I would have been as like ready or capable to take these things on. I've also learned just kind of the importance of surrounding yourself with positive community members. Like, I think that's so important in this space, that like we've really fought hard to get the right community members as our core community members. We didn't buy into the hype cycle when we did our first mint. We didn't buy into just a lot of these like kind of short-term wins to get like kind of, we were really, and even with our game, like I said, like we made it not like, to the extent that we were trying to protect the ecosystem, we made it not fun to play. And now you got to go fix that. But like, I think we've always erred on the side of like, I have this internal motto. It's patience, focus, execution, repeat. And anybody who spends enough time with me will hear me say that again and again and again. I think it's my pinned tweet. It's got like 3 likes. It's not a big deal. I'm not big on Twitter, but that's my pinned tweet: patience, focus, execution, repeat. And I think that if you just do that in this space that is that rewards everything opposite of that, right? That is like hype and attention and like what's next and like this kind of like rabbit mentality. That's not what we want, right? And it's not easy for like from the day to day, but when you look back at the project and you go, man, I'm so glad that we were diligent in that. I'm so glad that we like saw that meta taking place and we questioned it really hard. Like, is that best for us? Or is that just kind of something that other projects are doing now that in looking back, it will look very like weak, right? Or just look like a bad decision, right? And so I think that we've been really intentional about everything that we've done. And I think that comes from 20 years of being a founder and being with an incredibly, like both my, or all three of my other co-founders have been in that same position. We've all been building for a long, long time. And so I think there's a maturity that we have, but yeah, I'd say, not to sound arrogant, but I would say that I'm in my prime and it's really fun.
There we go. Okay, so the other two things that you mentioned to me, one is the user-generated content marketplace. Tell me more about that, and then we'll get into there from the integrated brand experiences.
Yeah, cool. So user-generated content marketplace. So I think one of the coolest things about just like any sort of a game or a community, like you look at something like Roblox, right? And they built this, I mean, one of the most valuable gaming ecosystems on the planet. And Roblox does not build games. They're just a platform that creates creators with players. And they have the tool set to allow and the platform that kind of connects all this. And I was like, we have an incredible team of artists, but we have 6 more universes to build. We have like, there's so many things that we want to do, but there's a lot of opportunities in the game to like build really cool art. Every single land, like when you're in the game, has like background art when you go to the land that like looks really cool. And I like some of mine and I don't like some of mine. And I was like, what if I could like get like really cool art on every single one of my lands? I could make that more like my room where I'm like, putting stuff on it. We have really cool hive decorations. We've always talked about this idea of like making the bees in a way that all the traits, the head, the eyes, the mouth, the clothes, and the accessories, which are all different traits, and in the background, there's 6 different kind of things that can be part of that generative collection. What if we could just build like things that were more custom to like a specific guild in the game, or you're a football fan, you want footballs, or you're a whatever, like that you could like customize all this stuff, or you just want really cool stuff that we didn't draw cool enough traits and you want cooler traits. So I was like, the best way to do this is just activate the insanely talented artists and creators that exist in the world. And if we just build a platform, and there's a lot that goes into this, right? We need a portal, like basically to buy and sell, both in the game as well as a web app. We need like a portal for the actual creators. We need a content moderation system. So that's like where we're going to build. But the idea is once we get that live, that we can have, and we get that, done in a really cool way, that we can have an endless marketplace of traits and art that people can experience in the game to customize their experience, make it way better for the player. We can empower artists and give them a place where they can start to like build and see their assets and art in the game and things like that. That would be really, really cool. And so, and then for us, it, obviously becomes a small revenue stream as well. But the bigger thing for me is I'm not worried about taking a huge chunk of whatever assets are sold or bought in that user-generated content marketplace. I just want the ecosystem to become significantly more valuable. When an artist puts a piece of art in your user-generated content marketplace, guess what the first thing they're going to do is go tweet it and tell all their friends, right? And so like it's a growth strategy. It's a way to make players have a more emotional connection. If you have a bee that's an NFT and you go find this really cool trait in the marketplace and you spend some of your HXD to go buy that, and then you fuse that onto your bee, and so your bee now has, instead of whatever hat it had, it has some really cool hat that you love, right? You're not going to sell that bee. It's you now. You have an emotional connection to that, right? We can start to empower one-of-one and like commission style of art to say like, hey, I want you to build me a specific art background for my land or my hive or my bee or things like that. So I just think it adds like a whole nother game into the gaming ecosystem that is empowering artists, giving people a better experience, and helping provide more utility for HXD.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's very cool. Anything you can customize is always going to make somebody feel a little bit more homey with it, right? Because it just feels more like them. So, yeah, that's cool. And so, okay, so tell me more about the integrated brand experiences.
Yeah, so this is, you talked about earlier, like how do mobile games make money traditionally? And we talked about like how we're replacing kind of in-app purchases, which is through like creating an in-app economy. The HXD is the way that you spend and getting that to flow around the economy. And we take that in as revenue. Well, there's also this ad model as well. And I was like, my daughter playing 2 minutes of Roblox and then watching 15 seconds of an ad is, if you ever sit down and do that, it is entirely painstaking. Like any normal adult would just pay the $4 to get that thing out of the way. You're not going to watch those ads. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. And you look at the advertisers and it's just other games advertising and stuff. So I was like, how do we approach this from a different way? And there's a lot of what I would call white space in the game. So like when you look at every trait of an NFT, like I can build a tracksuit and I can put a logo on that, or I can not put a logo on that, right? Like I can make a Solana logo, and that's just because it's white space. It's things that are, I look at all that land art, right? Like that's custom land art. Like that can be like a really cool branded like experience, or that can just be some like cool thing with like a dude, like sailing off into the sea, or like that's just like cartoon art. And so like I started to look at this and I was like, okay, what if we could do this? What if we could basically go find brands that wanted to connect with Web3 communities, and reputable global brands. And they wanted to do it in a meaningful way that was an incredibly high class way that didn't feel spammy or anything like that. So I created this idea of integrated brand experiences. So let's say I go to Starbucks right now and I go, hey, Starbucks, let's do this. I want to put a mint in my shop. It's a free mint. It's 2,000 of 3 different items. Maybe there's an accessory that's a Starbucks cup. There's a hat that's a Starbucks hat. And there's an apron that's a Starbucks apron. 2,000 free mints. And anybody who takes that item and then fuses it on their B, so that their B now is wearing a piece of Starbucks, when they're going out on missions and they're going to find like honey pots or whatever they're bringing back, there's a X% chance there's also a Starbucks gift card, or that there's something in it, right? And so now what we've done is we have the brands building experiences inside the game that the players are actually running to. They're trying to get those traits. Those bees become more valuable. They live forever in their hive. I started thinking about like differently, like, okay, let's say we find MasterCard. MasterCard approached us and this actually is what got me thinking about this. They reached out to us and were like, hey, we want to think about how to reach Web3 games like you. And so I was like, cool, how can we build like really cool stuff? So I was like, okay, what if we've got 4,000 lands right now? What if we took like 10% of those 40 land or that'd be 400 lands every single day, right? And that MasterCard were to come to us, and we talked about like we take in HXD tokens to our treasury. How do we turn that into fiat without moving that back into the market and competing with other people who hold it? Well, what if MasterCard comes in and buys $200,000 worth of my tokens from my treasury, and then I take those $200,000 worth of tokens and I put those back into player rewards? Now, when you show up to the map for the next day, you're going to see like yellow and red rings all over the map. Those are MasterCard lands that are bonus lands for that day. And if you find those lands on the map, you go to them. They have this really cool MasterCard art that's done in a badass way. I'll show you some of the art. It's really cool. And so it doesn't like pull from the experience. It doesn't feel like you're being advertised to. In fact, players are trying to find the MasterCard lands. If you're a landowner and one of your lands, and maybe the rewards are doubled that day. So if your B could earn 1 HXD, now it can earn 2 HXD. Everything's doubled if you're on a MasterCard land. Now, a landowner can earn more in commission because there's twice as much HXD coming through their land that day. Players are trying to find those lands in the game. So landowners want it. B owners want it. The MasterCard experience is now an integrated brand experience that people are running to. We do these daily tournaments for like some of these mini games. We have that. I talked about that Bumble Bash game. That's like the Whack-A-Bee game. And there's a leaderboard every single day. And I was like, what if we went to Taco Bell and we call it Taco Tuesday, right? And in addition to the rewards that we're already giving, on Tuesdays, the game board, instead of looking the way that it does, where it's like this garden, looks like a really cool like Taco Bell cantina type of thing, and like they're popping out of like soda, like a soda instead of, or there's tacos that they're like the bees are popping out of, or something like that, instead of like just like a hole in the ground. And we build this like really cool artwork that like you actually enjoy that artwork more than the other artwork. But on Tuesdays, everybody religiously goes and plays that tournament because there's an extra, 5,000 HXD in rewards that gets handed out. So these are like 3 like really clear examples that I go, Taco Bell wants to reach Web3 users in a meaningful way. How can I make it so that instead of when I'm on Roblox and those ads right now, advertisers, the only way that they can come to us is basically saying, I'll put 15 seconds of a commercial and the players have to put up with this if they want your game. We go, how do we enhance the experience in the game for the players because of the brand? And it's a little bit of, as we started building this out, I was telling my team, listen, guys, this isn't going to make a lot of sense because if Target comes to me and wants to buy $1 million worth of my HXD tokens, we take $1 million in, but we also move $1 million worth of tokens out. Our balance sheet didn't change. We didn't actually make money from $1 million advertising experience from Target. We're putting it all back into player rewards. But it's the Mr. Beast model where you just go, listen, we're about building an incredibly fun ecosystem that the ecosystem becomes more and more valuable because people want to come in, they want to play because they've heard about what's going on. And so brands flock to it, players flock to it. And ultimately our value is not built in the fact that we're taking money from advertisers, because every bit of what we're taking, we're just pushing back into the game, but that we're building a more valuable and interesting ecosystem. And so that's one of the things that we're working on right now. We've got 2 integrated brand partners that we're working on, trying to, finalize some stuff. The goal would be by the end of this year, we can have some of those really cool integrated brand partnerships.
Yeah, I mean, that's super cool. It kind of reminds me of like the first time I saw kind of like an integrated brand experience on Fortnite, right? And it was like, I think it might have been, I don't know, it was like advertising for a movie, or like there was a Travis Scott concert and stuff like that. And it's like, it made me want to talk about it. Even though I knew I was being advertised to, I was like, it doesn't feel that way. It does feel like it's actually something I'm enjoying more that the advertisers hear, and same thing anytime there was a movie launch, they would have a new skin in the marketplace that you could buy that was associated with that. They had like an Ariana Grande skin and all these different things, right? And it was like, that's a really cool way to kind of, yes, you're being advertised to, but it's in a way that you feel like is enhancing your experience versus the opposite, which is what you talked about of you're playing a game and it's like all of a sudden you're in the zone and then ad pops up and you got to watch it for the next 30 seconds and you feel like, damn, I'm just wasting time, right? So yeah, no, that's very, very cool. But yeah, man, I feel like with that, we can kind of wrap it up. Is there anything that you want to leave the community with? Anything you want to leave the whole NFT space with? Anything you want to leave everybody with? I know that's a broad question, but I feel like we went over a lot, but is there anything we didn't cover?
Yeah, I guess I would just say, again, I go back to patience, focus, execution, repeat. This is the Web3 ecosystem is so fast-paced, and I love that. There's so many cool things that comes out of it, but it's also the very much like kind of the when economy and like the watching minute to minute what those assets are doing. And I think that by the time we get to the end of this year, and by the time we get to the middle of next year, and the time we get to the end of the next year, we'll be able to look back and it will be so obvious. We'll be able to rewatch this and go, man, we have a track record of executing everything that we say we're going to execute. Like, you can go back and watch my videos. I'm incredibly well documented with all the updates and everything that we say that we're going to build and do. And if the vision that I've laid out today seems like it could change Web3 gaming forever, then, I think this can be a really cool community to be a part of. But just understand, we can't change Web3 gaming overnight. We're not building for hype. We're building for something that we believe is truly, truly sustainable. And, I think that by the end of this year, we'll make a lot of waves. I think that when we can start to be the game that now has, 30, 50,000 daily active users, when hopefully we get our token moving back in the correct direction because we have more liquidity coming into our gaming ecosystem. We have, more utility for that token in the things that we're doing. Our NFT collections have always been pretty healthy in terms of price and floor price and all that stuff, but I think that we can get even healthier there. My goal is with all of these things is I just want to bring happiness to your life, right? And I know that profits always create happiness, and it's like a very tangible way to kind of measure that happiness. But like everything that I'm doing, I'm just trying to bring happiness. And so like I always talk about in the game, everything's a happiness sink. I think, as we try and create these projects, I've kind of got like 3 things that I always think about when we're doing anything, like the land raffle system, or, building the secondary marketplace that's in the game, or what were some of the integrated brand experiences, or anything like that. Like anytime that the user generated content marketplace, all of these things, when I start to think about like what's next, there's kind of 3 check boxes. One is it being done in a new and innovative way? And it doesn't mean that it's never been done before, but like, are we doing something that we're actually kind of moving the space forward in a meaningful way? Number 2, is it gamified and fun? Is it something that adds just like happiness to your life? And then number 3, is it adding value back to our ecosystem? And if it does those 3 things, I'm generally pretty bullish on moving on it, right? And so I think that we've done a lot of things in kind of that mechanic. And it's a fun space to be in. It's a little bit, it's a fun space all in all, right? I care so deeply about the community and the holders, and I just want that. But I also understand that doing the right thing is doing things with focus and patience, executing at an incredibly high level, and just doing that again and again and again. And so I would say if you're part of our community, just understand that we're doing a lot of really, really cool shit. And when we look back, it's going to seem pretty damn obvious, and it should be a lot of fun. But yeah, September 15th, if you're a new player, just hold off, but set a reminder in your phone to go download on September 15th. The game will be totally new, completely reworked onboarding mechanics. And I think that's kind of the game that I want everybody really onboarding and playing. And I think you guys will have a lot of fun. So
There we go. I'm gonna set my calendar too. Downloading it right on September 15th. But hey, man, appreciate you. Appreciate the conversations. Always appreciate chatting with you. We for people who don't know, we recorded this episode a few hours after we got together. We've been just shooting the shit for the last few hours, and always enjoy that. Just talking about the space, talking about the game, talking about just different ideas and things like that. So always enjoyed just talking with you in general. And yeah, man.
Hey, so before we wrap, I don't think this has ever been done before, but can I ask you a couple questions, just like kind of NFT
go for
convo? And you can cut this if you want, but you get to see a lot of founders, and you get to see a lot of projects that work both the right way and the wrong way. You're in the NFT space, you're deeply like into the degen and all that stuff. What do you think? You asked me kind of like what have I learned? Like just looking at all of this, your connection to all the different projects, to all the different founders, like what have you learned in this space, or how are you different today than you were a year ago? And because I think I think you have a really interesting and unique. I have not asked you this, so I don't know your answer, but I think you will have a unique perspective. What is it that you think you've matured or learned or grown in this space? And then I would also say, like, if you don't like that question, I'll throw two out, and you can pick which one you want. But like, what are you most excited about for kind of the future of all this stuff, other than the bull market? Again, we're all looking forward to that. But like, is there anything that you're like really excited about that you think is going to change Web3 or is changing Web3, or projects or founders that are doing things differently? Like just anything in that space. Like, I think it'd be really cool to kind of hear your take on, you always get to ask questions, but you never get to like give answers. I think you got a ton of insights.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing that I'm excited about is that we're no longer in La La Land. And what I mean by that is I think when you're in a bull market, your desire to actively improve the space isn't as high as it should be, because pretty much anything that you do just works, right? And I think when you're in a bear market, you get punched in the face often, right? And like you learn, if you're I don't know, like if you're constantly just getting punched in the face, eventually you're like, God, I just want to stop getting punched in the face. Okay, how do I stop that, right? And I think once again, when you're in a bull market, it's this whole state of euphoria where anything you do just works. And so are you really like that well thought out of an NFT project, or are you just in a bull market and everything you do just works? And I think right now the projects that are going to survive are going to be the ones that are so well thought out. They're actively trying to think about, how do we make this onboarding experience easier? How do we make this simpler for other people to understand? How do we educate people who are not within our community about what we're doing? How do we make this where we can actually get Web 2 attention to what we're doing, right? And so I think people's priorities have shifted from, we're in a bull market and everything just rips, so I'm going to buy this because it's pumping, and it, next thing you know, the floor is going to double or triple or whatever. Now it's actively, how do we make sure this space survives? And when you're in survive mode, you really have to think harder in terms of, is this really needed? Is this not? Why are we minting this? Why are we minting it at that price? What is this going to lead to? Why is this going to succeed? So you start asking questions that actually matter. And I think the constructive criticism is a good thing. It forces projects to be better, right? And so I think in a way, yes, can that lead to toxicity when people go overboard and they're no longer, just offering constructive criticisms, or they're just being dickheads? Yeah, that obviously is something that you have to mitigate. But I do think, again, when you're just in that pure euphoria phase, it's just a bunch of bullshit. So I would rather people be honest about, how do we actively make these projects better? Because for Web3 to succeed, we need more projects to be successful. And so the more that people are offering their advice and their constructive criticism and things like that to make projects better, the whole space grows as a result of that. You have less scammers, you have less grifters, you have less bullshit like that, because those people don't actively want to work on their projects. So the people who are here right now are active builders who are truly trying to make this great. And I think, once again, when you're in a bear market, you look at yourself, you look at your project, and you go, okay, why isn't this working? What are we not doing right? And how do we learn from that? Where, once again, I think when you're in a bull, you're just like, well, anything I can do just works. And so you don't learn anything. So I get excited about the learning phase that we're in right now, and that people are actively, the space is improving. It's becoming simpler. We're finding ways to simplify things so people actively understand it. We're realizing some of our problems and how we need to solve those problems. And that's the part that I get excited about, the euphoria and all of that. Yeah, I'm not a fan of all of that because it doesn't lead to actual growth. Bear markets lead to growth, and that's why I enjoy being here, because I just think Web3 in itself is going to be so much of a better position when we're in the next bull market. There's gonna be less bullshit, less scams, and everything like that. Those are still always going to exist because inherently when you're in a bull market, those things come up. But people are going to be so much smarter to be able to spot them out and call them out so that people don't lose money and don't get screwed over and things like that. So we're all just becoming smarter. I think whether you're a project founder, whether you're a consumer in the marketplace, like, you're becoming smarter, and that's a good thing. We need that.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. It was the like a year ago, it was just like anything. It was like, yeah, just turn it into an NFT, right? It was like, didn't matter if it actually made sense or not, or if that added utility or anything like that. And I think you're really starting to see that the projects that are in Web3 are trying to figure out, how do you take something that exists right now in the world, whether it's Web2 or in the world, and if only you had the suite of tools that Web3 offers, you could enhance that and make it significantly better. And that's why we need Web3 for this thing, as opposed to just like, hey, take this thing that already works perfectly, slap an NFT or call it Web3, print a token, have it staked, and all of a sudden that's for some reason benefiting our lives. It just doesn't, right? And so I think it's also fun to remember that probably, especially the Solana, part of the reason we're in this is to have fun, to be entertained. I talk about happiness and like kind of my goal, and so like it's not all profits, and making profits and being a part of projects that go up is always fun, but even just some of the angry spaces are sometimes fun to just listen to and hear what people are bitching about and things like that. And anyways, I enjoy being entertained in this space, and I also enjoy really figuring ways that it can improve our lives. So
yeah, 100%, man. Well, hey, I'm glad you're here. I appreciate chatting with you as always. Drop your socials. Where can people find you?
Oh man, go to honey.land, and you've got everything there. That's our website. That's where you can download the game. If you want to find me, I'm Filbert Steiner on Twitter. Like I said, I'm not a big Twitter personality. Every now and then I post, but mostly retweet stuff. But I'm in Discord, and you can find, if you go to our Honeyland channel on YouTube, you'll find me at least once a week leaving project updates videos and trying to be as communicative with the community and project and out there Web2, Web3 as I can. So
there we go, man. Well, hey, appreciate you coming on, and I know you'll be coming back at some point, but appreciate it. Looking forward to next time we'll be chatting. The game will be officially live on the iOS and Android store worldwide, so that's going to be super exciting. Until then, everybody go download it on Test Flight, and we'll go from there.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate you.
No problem. See you guys.